I have two chronic arm injuries I might carry for the rest of my life. I could have stopped before I got them. I knew something was wrong, but I kept going anyway. This podcast works through the 81 chapters of the Daodejing, one at a time, not as history, not as philosophy to understand and set aside, but as a practice manual for living. But no belief required, no doctrine, just what can be noticed, sat with, and verified in your own experience. You don't need to have heard the earlier episodes. Just start here. Tao will meet you where you are. The Tao moment from this week. I was making coffee the other morning using a small electric whisk to froth the milk. I was moving it around, trying to get it spinning, going faster, trying to hurry it up, making a mess. And at some point, something in me just stopped. I held the tool steady and let my wrist and hand go still. The centrifugal force did the rest. The chocolate melted into the milk in slow spirals. The froth came up on its own. I basically disappeared from the action. I stood there holding a perfectly frothed cup of coffee and thought, that's it. That's what I keep missing about Wu Wei. It's not just acting without ego or an agenda or contrivance. And it's definitely not doing nothing, like being passive, as many people falsely believe. It's that I stop adding force to something that already has its own. There's a difference between those two things that's almost impossible to explain and completely obvious the moment you feel it in your hands. I put the cup down and just stayed with that for a while. This week's translation, Chapter 9, Avoiding Excess is the title. I give it. Holding and overfilling is not as good as stopping. Hammering to a sharp point can't long hold. Gold and jade filling the hall, no one can guard it. Riches rank than arrogance, one bequeaths blame on oneself. Accomplish the work, then step back. This is heaven's way. Let's do a brief analysis before getting into the discussion. The second line is where I want to spend a moment. Chuai, that's the physical act of hammering metal into shape. Rei is sharpness, a blade edge. Many translations go abstract here. They say something like tempered to its sharpest. I kept the physical action hammering to a sharp point because you can feel what happens. What happens to metal when you keep going past useful sharpness and becomes brittle. The edge that was its strength becomes the place it breaks. That singular image is doing everything in this chapter. Every line is a version of it. The overfilled vessel, the guarded hall, the arrogant man making himself a target. All of them are the blade that kept going. And then the last line, let's look at that. Gong sui, shen tui, tian zhi dao. Gong, that's the completed work. Sui is accomplishment, the thing fully done. Shen tui, that's the body stepping back. And then tian zhi dao, heaven's way. It's not a command. It's not advice. It is just a description. It's simply what the natural order does when nothing is overriding it. It completes. It steps back. It doesn't need to be told. One more. The fourth line ends with "jiu." I translated it as blame rather than fault. Fault is internal, something you carry. It's my fault. Blame is external, what the world renders against you, the judgment that lands from outside. The arrogant one isn't just flawed, they've made themselves a target. The world now has a case, so blame felt true. There's 5 lines in this chapter, but essentially one image. The hammering that knew when to stop, and the one that didn't. Let's discuss. There's a story in the Zhuangzi about a cook. Prince Hui watches his cook butcher an ox. The knife sings, the joints open, the whole carcass falls apart like it was already in pieces, just waiting to be found. The prince is stunned. He says, "Your skill is something else." The cook puts the knife down. He says, "What I follow is Dao, which is beyond mere skill. When I first began cutting up oxen, I saw nothing but whole animals. After 3 years of practice, I couldn't see the whole ox anymore. Now I work with my mind and not with my eye. My mind works without the control of the senses. It finds the spaces, the natural cavities, the places where the blade can go without meeting resistance. All these years, the same knife, the edge still fresh as the day it was ground." I think about that story when I think about how my arms feel now. I've been doing Tai Chi for a long time and wanted one more run at hard external martial arts, real contact, real intensity, real injuries. So I trained Muay Thai. For over a year, I was hitting the pads and bags with full intensity. I made genuine gains, real athleticism, real technique, and I was proud of it. But then something in my right elbow sent a signal, not an injury yet, just a warning, the kind that has a quality of there's an edge here, and if you're paying attention, you might notice it. And I felt it, and I noted it, and I kept going because I was improving, and I had something I wanted to prove. And stopping felt like retreat because I'd already decided what I was doing, and the body's opinion was inconvenient. Fighters are past their prime in their 30s. I was doing what 25-year-olds do in a body that had spent decades building something else. By the time I actually stopped, the damage was done, and now I have 2 chronic arm injuries just sitting there. The cook's knife never met resistance because he never forced it. He found the spaces. I was hammering. Boy, was I hammering. I was looking at the whole ox, not the openings. That one unfolded over a year. The body gave me months of signals. But sometimes you only get about 3 seconds. It was 2009, early April, right around this time of year. I've been biking about 17 miles each way to work. City to suburbs, I was loving it. Cold mornings, the ride was waking everything up. That particular morning, I was coming fast down a long hill toward a major 4-way intersection, coasting in a high gear, the way you naturally are when you've been letting a hill do the work. I came off the path and stopped at the crosswalk to check for left-turning cars. It was clear. I looked up, and the signal was already flashing the hand, the light about to change. But I had a window. Tight, but there. Except I was in a high gear. The moment I pushed down on the pedals, I felt it. Enormous resistance. The bike barely moved. That was the sign. I kept going. I pressed through it slowly, grinding into the intersection, in the wrong gear, at the wrong speed, legally in the crosswalk, crossing lane by lane. But by the time I cleared 2 lanes and reached the left turn lane, the light changed. Early April morning, bright sun, straight into the driver's eyes. The man in the truck was probably watching for the green arrow. Suburbs, not a lot of bikers, definitely not that time of year back then. He accelerated right into me. Severe break, couldn't walk for months. The ankle joint permanently damaged, significant loss of dorsiflexion, hasn't come back and won't. The sign was the resistance in the pedals. I felt it. I continued anyway. The cook felt the resistance too. That's the whole story. He felt it and stopped, found another opening. That's why after 19 years, his knife is still sharp. But this isn't just about bodies, though the body is always the first place to look. It knows before we do, and we override it constantly. The seasons don't get this wrong. Spring rains fill the aquifers, open the seeds, and ease off. They don't keep flooding the ground past what can be received. Summer warmth peaks in July, gives the plants everything they need to fruit, and then wanes. The trees push everything into their fruit until the light shifts in September, and something in them knows, stop. Fall gives one last opening. Gourd, squash, root vegetables, pulling the last warmth down, and then yields entirely. Winter doesn't apologize. It just holds the ground empty and still, the way a granary has to be empty before the new harvest fills it. Each season accomplishes its work and steps back, not reluctantly, not strategically, because stepping back is part of the work. We mostly don't work that way. We override the signal. We keep going past the natural end of things. Meetings, relationships, projects, phases of life. Because stopping feels like giving something up, or admitting something, or losing ground, we fought for it. And then we wonder why the blade broke, why we're exhausted, why nothing feels finished, no matter how much we do. Gong sui, shin tui. Accomplish the work, step back. Not as defeat, not as strategy, as the natural completion of the arc. The thing the moment was always moving toward once you stop forcing it somewhere else. What I notice now, years out from both those injuries, there's more available when I'm not hammering. More sensitivity, more actual power, the rooted kind, not the forced kind. The edge I was chasing turned out to be the wrong edge entirely. The cook's knife finds the natural cavities. That's not passivity. It's not giving up. It's a higher order of attention. The kind that can feel where the resistance is and trust the spaces enough to move through them. Let's sit with that for a moment. You don't need to close your eyes. If you're driving, stay with the road. But just notice right now and whatever you're carrying today, where you're still pushing past a signal. Not to fix it, not to analyze it. The cook didn't analyze the ox. He just stopped where he felt resistance and looked for the opening. You probably already know what it is. The body usually does. Stay with that for a moment. Not a problem to solve, just as something seen. Now, what would it look like to put the knife down? Not abandon the work, just stop forcing the edge. Maybe that's a breath. Maybe it's the acknowledgement that something really finished 3 weeks ago and you're still holding it. Maybe it's as small as uncurling your hands right now, wherever they are. Let the thing that's done be done. There's something slightly different in the quality of what remains when you do that. Not dramatic, just cleaner. The cook's kitchen after the work is finished. The surfaces are clear. The blade is resting. That's shen tui, the body stepping back from what it just completed. What opens in that space isn't emptiness as absence. It's emptiness as availability. The granary cleared. The knife still sharp, ready for whatever the next ox turns out to be. Gong sui, shen tui, tian zhi dao. Prince Hui watched his cook and said, I have learned how to live. He didn't say, I have learned how to butcher. The work isn't finished until you've stepped back from it. After 19 years, the same knife, still sharp. Zhi er ying zhi, bu ru qi yi. Chuai er rui zhi, bu ke chang bao. Jin yu man tang, mo zhi neng shou. Fu gui er jiao, zi yi qi jiu. Gong sui shen tui, tian zhi dao.